I would like to give the floor to a representative speaking on behalf of Indigenous Peoples organizations. You have the floor.
Ko aora ki te mauka, ko waita ki te awa, ko tahupōta ki te tupuna. Ko uenoku, ko tahupōta ka whare, ko kāti raki amo, ko kāti waiwai, ko kāti rua hiki hiki, ka karakataka, e mihi ana ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora everyone, my name is Keta Sherwood-O'Regan and I'm speaking to you today as a proudly disabled Kai Tahu woman from Te Waipounamu, the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. When I introduce myself in this way, I am connecting to my family, to my ancestors, to my waters, my rivers, and to our chiefly ancestral mountain Aoraki, who stands amongst his brothers as the tallest peak in the Southern Alps, which are currently melting due to your inaction. As Indigenous peoples, we come here every year, often on our own dime, to advocate for our peoples and for our lands because it is what must be done. We're constantly forced to fight for our rights to be included. And while we acknowledge the importance of the local communities and Indigenous peoples platform work plan being adopted at this session, we can't help but feel the irony of your refusal to include human rights and Indigenous peoples' rights in Article 6, when we know that market approaches have already directly harmed our communities. Our knowledge cannot be upheld if our rights are not upheld. You treat negotiations like a zero-sum game where you make deals behind closed doors, trading off our rights for the profits of the very corporations who caused this problem in the first place. But you forget that we cannot negotiate with nature. Since the colonial project began, we have been overcoming an apocalypse on our lands. This has embedded patriarchy, homophobia, ableism, transphobia, white supremacy, and systemic oppressions in our national and international mechanisms. When you silence us, you deny yourselves learning from our ways, and you continue to sideline those who have real solutions for all communities. We are experts on climate. We are the kaitiaki, the stewards of nature. We know the legitimacy of our voices, and it's about time that you recognized it too. Hear our stories, learn our histories, stop taking up space with your false solutions, and get out of our way. Because we are here. We're here with real solutions, and we are united with all people with disabilities and other structurally oppressed groups and the other constituencies that you can see standing behind me right now. We are united in our vision for transformative change because people power is climate justice. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to a representative speaking on behalf of women and gender non-governmental organizations.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jolijn Holtz, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Women and Gender constituency. First, we take the opportunity to welcome what we see as one of the strongest outcomes of this COP, the adoption of the Gender Action Plan. We thank parties for pushing for a strong outcome on this. However, at this COP, we saw an unprecedented resistance of parties against acknowledging the interconnections of human rights with every aspect of the negotiations. We heard a resounding call from countries in support of human rights in Article 6 just this morning, which we applaud as we cannot allow any decision on Article 6 to go forward that would infringe on rights and ultimately not advance the goals of the Convention. We expect parties to continue this call going forward. Every time you undermine human rights, you undermine gender equality. Every time an environmental defender is threatened, raped, disappeared, or murdered, the violator is you. Your commitments to patriarchy, capitalism, militarism, colonialism, racism, and ecocide are the only ones you have made and which you support with real finance. Until these systems of oppression are dismantled, which lock out peaceful protesters and communities, including Indigenous peoples and women, from real participation and decision-making, until the root causes of this climate catastrophe are reckoned with, we will be here. You will hear our voices raised in solidarity. You will see our bodies in the halls and on the streets and on the front lines. You took the COP away from the people of Chile and Latin America, but you cannot silence us. You cannot silence the people. You cannot silence women, nor Indigenous peoples, nor migrants, nor workers, nor peasants, nor lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, queer, intersex, and two-spirited people. You cannot silence people of color, nor people of living with disabilities, nor the elders, and not the youth. You cannot silence or rally and cry for justice, people power, climate justice.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to two representatives speaking on behalf of youth non-governmental organizations.
Thank you, Chair. We are Shreya Kese from Youth for NDC from Nepal and
Zuzana Borowska from the Polish Ecological Club from Poland.
speaking on behalf of Youth Constituency. Firstly, regarding NDCs, countries need to urgently enhance and revise them with the best available science and consultation with stakeholders. Youth priorities, including action for climate empowerment, green jobs, access to climate finance, must be reflected in their design. We, as youth, are ready to be included in the design and implementation of NDCs. On Warsaw International Mechanism of Loss and Damage, we are disappointed by the lack of progress on mobilizing funds for loss and damage for the most vulnerable on common time frames. We call for urgent conclusion of this item at SB 52. The timelines of global stocktake should not be up for discussion. We need to move fast.
The current commitments by parties for GCF and Adaptation Fund are insufficient. You use the word multilateralism, but continue to ignore the urgent need for financing in LMICs. You must tax polluters for the damage they have done and build strong financial mechanisms to avoid further human and environmental crises. On Article 6, market mechanisms must respect human rights and indigenous peoples' rights while enhancing ambitions and increasing finance flows. Emissions reductions projects should not be used as a scheme to profit from loopholes, as indicated in the wording other purposes. Civil society has been shut out of this COP. Our lives, children and future generations are in your hands, and you are failing us. Do you want to be remembered as the ones who had the chance to act, but decided not to? As betrayers of our generation, of indigenous people, and of communities desperately fighting on the ground? We are rising, we are fighting, and we will win. COPs have failed people and the planet. People power, climate justice, now. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. I would like to give the floor to representatives speaking on behalf of trade union non-governmental organizations. You have the floor.
Thank you, President. My name is Francis Stewart from the Scottish Trade Union Congress. I'm speaking on behalf of the global workers' movement represented by the ITUC. We represent 207 million workers from 165 countries. What we have seen in the last 2 weeks is nothing short of a disgrace. Unions are bitterly disappointed. We were hoping to see governments agreeing ambitious climate justice policies that responded to the climate emergency that is threatening our lives, our jobs, our livelihoods, our communities, and our dignity. What we have is the polar opposite. Civil society has been locked out, while government backtrack on what has been negotiated over all the years. What we have seen is nothing less than parties trying to dismantle the Paris Agreement. They are much more interested in trading emissions and making money from it than actually reducing them. There is no respect to the science, no respect for human rights, no social justice, no ambition, and no commitments to action. This failure cannot be disentangled from the other crises we see around the world. The rich are getting richer while the poor suffer. This is exacerbated by climate change. Trade unionists are under attack around the world. Governments, including the Chilean government, attack their own people. We need bold, transformative action from governments to pave the way for a just transition. Next year's COP will be in my home city of Glasgow. We need to see climate measures to protect workers' rights and create decent jobs. Workers have to be at the table to negotiate enhanced NDCs, to be ready to be presented in Glasgow, not waiting for other governments to go first or delaying to see how it turns out. We want social protection policies for people that will be impacted. And we want the rich countries to pay up for the climate finance that they have committed to do for so many years but not delivered. None of this is reflected in this COP. This COP has failed the people and the planet. People power, climate justice.
I would like to give the floor to a representative of on behalf of research and independent non-governmental organizations. You have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. I have the pleasure to speak on behalf of the Ringo constituency. The Ringos would like to start by expressing appreciation for the Chilean COP presidency's recognition of the importance of putting science at the center of COP25. We also applaud the first ever virtual meeting of country science ministers in conjunction with the COP. However, we regret any dilution of science in the text. Through 25 years of COPs, plentiful technical solutions for mitigation and adaptation, as well as finance and market mechanisms have been developed, linking research with innovation. It is now time to put research and the agreement into action. We welcome very much the effort, but effort and talk and negotiations are not longer sufficient. We urge us all to return home to implement the details of the Paris Agreement now. Through capacity building, we must give people the tools and empowerment to address climate change in their communities. The research community stands ready to serve as knowledge brokers to explain the regional relevance of the scientific evidence and COP decisions in our home communities and countries. We are also prepared to help the transformation of knowledge into day-to-day practice. The Ringos encourage the private and the public sectors to engage in climate action and move to a more circular economy. Do not waste time. Do not waste our time. In conclusion, the Ringos would like to express our sincere gratitude to the governments and people of Chile and Spain for pulling together COP25 in such a short time. This was a good example of how the global North and South can come together and accomplish a great task, a metaphor for what we need to do to advance the provisions of the Paris Agreement and COP25. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to two representatives speaking on behalf of environmental non-governmental organizations. You have the floor.
My name is Adam, and I'm here to speak to anybody who carries in their heart some hope of climate justice, some hope of a livable future. I know that you're all tired, because we for sure are. We are tired of governments siding with the polluters. We are tired of our lives being negotiated away for money. The people are tired of being ignored, while a handful of wreckers and bullies negotiate in bad faith. We know that until we get them out of power, they will continue to sabotage our future. Our governments spent 2 weeks focused on carbon trafficking above all else. A few of them focused on cheating while trafficking, but they all thought of convoluted schemes which are unjust and ineffective. Yet you ignore the clear and simple solutions, like leaving fossil fuels in the ground. It's really not complex. We need to stop frying our planet, and we need to provide support to those who are staring down the barrel of the climate crisis, the barrel of devastation. Millions of us around the world are rallying, striking in the streets, demanding real and fair solutions and the right to a dignified life, because we will never accept crumbs of a future, and we will make the polluters pay. This COP has failed the people and the planet. People power, climate justice.
Thank you. My name is Sebastian Deuk, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Climate Action Network. Cannes has followed these climate negotiations since they started in 1991, and never before witnessed such a disconnection between what the science and the people demand and what governments are delivering. We witness an almost complete absence of ambition and urgency from all the large emitters. And then to hear that one country blocked language on addressing this gap is obnoxious. The arrogance to block progress while leaving the Paris Agreement is treacherous. Furthermore, this COP has failed to provide new and additional finance to support those people suffering from climate-induced loss and damage and increasingly dramatic impacts of the climate crisis. On rules for Article 6, Climate Action Network applauds all those who stood strong on environmental integrity and social safeguards, including human rights and Indigenous Peoples' rights. However, we are gravely concerned by the exclusion of vulnerable countries from key negotiations and call on future presidencies to ensure full inclusiveness. But as governments screw up, people rise up. COP25 has not delivered, but we will return stronger in 2020. We will rise and unleash unprecedented movements if governments keep failing the people and the planet. We are closing ranks with the unions, with the climate justice movements, with the indigenous peoples, with the faith-based communities, and with the youth. This process is failing the people and the planet. People power, climate justice.
Thank you. We have now reached the end of our joint plenary.